Hello, and thank you for joining us. My name is Dylan Little with the Mid-Continent Public Library. This is the 26th year of the Mid-Continent Public Library's Veteran Salute, an annual tradition honoring and highlighting the stories and service of our local veterans. Going back several years, the library has taken the opportunity to record the stories of local veterans with the help of our Midwest Genealogy Center. If you joined us last year, you may have viewed our interviews with a remarkable group of local Korean War veterans. This year, we're back to work with local filmmaker Kevin Bryce to highlight a new generation of veterans, those who joined the service in the wake of 9/11. As you will soon discover, every veteran story is as dynamic as it is powerful. We are lucky to have a chance to share these Kansas City area veterans in the weeks to come. Before we turn over the focus to this group of extraordinary individuals with their stories of service, we want to preface this special program with a heads up. This presentation contains adult language and graphic descriptions of violence. It may not be suitable for all ages, and viewer discretion is advised.
I'm Sarah Peterson Davis, and I'm a Special Events Coordinator here at Mid-Continent Public Library. And I'll have you two introduce yourselves and give the audience an idea of why you're here today.
Okay. Well, my name is Dale Duncan.
I'm Megan Duncan.
And we're here to talk about our son, Army Specialist Spencer Colson Duncan. Spencer was killed in action in Wardak Province, Afghanistan on August 6, 2011. And so we became Gold Star parents at that time. And we want people to know about him. We want to make sure that his legacy is continued, and we want to help other veterans. And so that's the reason we're here.
Great, great. Well, now tell me about Spencer. Did he always want to be in the service? Was that something that he came up with in junior high school, or kind of how did that all start?
Well, actually, it started on 9/11.
Okay.
He was in 6th grade, and he came home from school that day, and we were talking about, they didn't let them watch everything that day, but some of the things that happened, and we were talking about that, and Spencer said, "This is kind of like the bully bringing the fight to our backyard, isn't it?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I guess it kind of is." And he said, "Well, that's not right, Mom, and we should do something about it. I'm going to do something about it." And then fast forward to just a few weeks after he graduated from high school, he called me and said, "I need my birth certificate because I've just joined the Army." So it was kind of, something that we weren't super surprised about, but we're taken back by how suddenly he put that plan in action, and he was in training by the end of that summer, so it was right out of high school, basically.
Wow. And where did he go to high school?
Olathe South High School in
Okay.
Olathe. We live in Olathe.
Okay. So did any of his other classmates that inclined to join the service, or was he kind of an anomaly at Olathe South, or?
Well, no, there were others that had joined, and in fact there was one good friend of his, Brennan, who had joined the service. I don't know how much earlier than that, but had spent some time in the service, and Spencer was always close to him. And I think that might have contributed a little bit to his desire, but his passion was always, this country, his love for country. He wanted to do something to serve. He wanted to do that. And honestly, he struggled all through high school. High school was just a challenge for him to continue to keep his attention there and to do well in school. He was smart. He knew what he needed to do, but it was a challenge to be in the seat.
Because he knew what he really wanted to do.
I think so, yeah. And so, as Megan said, as soon as he graduated from high school, he joined the Army. We didn't know that he was going to do that. I think we had an idea. We kind of thought that this kid was going to do something, in the military. But we didn't know it would be that quickly. We didn't know that he was, thinking about doing it that soon. And, kind of surprised us.
Okay. So then where did he go from there? He was in the reserves first?
The Army Reserves, yes.
Okay.
And so he trained to be a Chinook helicopter repairer, which was the spot he wanted. He loved to fly, and we joke about even when he was driving, he was flying because he had a tendency to go pretty fast. So he decided to take advantage of this opportunity to learn how to repair Chinooks, and pretty much as soon as he was done with his training and came back, his spot was in Gardner New Century Air Center. There's a Chinook unit there, so it was close to home, which was great for us. Not for him, but it was great for us. And he just threw himself into learning everything he possibly could about how those big birds worked. And they tagged him pretty quickly to become flight crew. And he passed up the opportunity. He said, "No, I want to learn everything there is to know," because that's the way his mind worked. He wanted to know how things worked before he jumped into the middle of them. And he knew how his car worked, and he knew how his stereo worked. And when he was 3 years old, he knew how our TV remote worked because he took it completely apart and put it back together again. So it was just his inquisitive mind of just wanting to know everything there was to know. So when he was flight crew, when he did make flight crew, he knew what he was doing. He knew not only his job as part of the flight crew, but he knew what was making the helicopter move and what to do in case of an emergency. And that's really what he wanted. He wanted to have that knowledge base to just fall back on and know exactly everything that there was to know about that. It was kind of his personality.
Yeah. So that mechanical part of it was perfect for him.
Yes.
Yeah.
He really landed where he was supposed to be.
So did y'all feel pretty good though that he was in the reserve and he was close to home, although all those other things were happening?
Well,
somewhere else, or
no. I mean, actually, the thing about post 9/11 vets, they raise their hand. They know they're going somewhere. People in my generation, not necessarily so. I know people that served, and they didn't go anywhere but here. And so these kids, and I call them kids because they're all younger than I am, but they raise their hands knowing that they're going to be going somewhere. And that was what Spencer wanted. He wanted to make a difference. He didn't join so that he could get the college education. He could have had a college education. That wasn't what he was going for. His spirit was definitely take care of everybody else. That was his oldest kid. So, it was his mentality, take care of everybody else. So that was part of it. But he really loved this country. He really loved freedom, and he exercised his freedoms quite a bit.
I think he joined the reserves primarily because of the Chinook unit.
Oh, absolutely.
And it was the opportunity to be in that unit, to work on that helicopter, to learn how to fly in that helicopter. That's what drew him, and he was hooked. They call themselves the hookers, by the way.
Oh, okay. Well, sure.
It's a heavy hauler aircraft, and primarily its task is to go into areas infill with equipment, and they haul the equipment underneath, Humvees and everything underneath, or inside the helicopter, and bring soldiers in as well, and then exfil, take them back out. And that's primarily what their tasks were. And he just fell in love with that. And he was really, really good at it.
Yeah.
And quickly kind of developed the skills that were needed to be a part of that unit.
So he knew, so he could fly it.
It was not
as a
pilot.
repair, right? But as on the crew, they could take it on to make sure that their repairs were done correctly, and that is that right? Or when he said fly, you mean just be on it?
Yeah, there are two parts of the Army aviation for the Chinook helicopter. There's the maintenance crews, which are on the ground, typically taking care of it and keeping them running, doing the mechanics for the helicopter. That's where Spencer started.
Okay.
And then there's the flight crews, which are typically two pilots, a crew chief, a flight engineer, and another individual on the aircraft. And so typically 5 Army crew.
Okay.
And so he moved from the helicopter repairman to the flight crew.
And what was his role as a flight crew?
He was a door gunner. Spencer was 21 years old when he was killed, and so he hadn't been in the reserves that long, and he was developing his skills as a door gunner. Door gunner sat right behind the 2 pilots, and had the left window, looked out the window. But he was on the path, and his training was on a path to become a flight engineer. And the flight engineer was the person who was in charge of the entire back of the helicopter.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because there's the front and the back. It's kind of like two different, kind of like a train. There's the people in the front.
The pilots
and
sit in the
people
cockpit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And the rest of the crew's kind of in that back area.
All right. So he really he was really on track to know everything about that because he'd
Yes.
If,
Yes.
been from
if
tip
we
to
had
tail.
if we had not lost him, and he had made his way back, he would have gone to flight school. He would have learned how to fly, and I'm sure he would be a pilot
Absolutely.
today.
Absolutely. Yes.
Flying the Chinooks.
And you think he probably would have been career? He would have been
I think
career
so.
I think so.
Army.
What's that flight thing? He was always fascinated with flying. Not ever swimming or anything with water.
Which is why the Navy didn't
yeah,
work
the
out
Navy
so
wasn't
much
going to be for him. But flying, yeah, that was his thing, and he loved it. He loved doing that, and I think part of it was the love of flying, and I think another part of it was just finding his thing. And we talk often about there are people who live their entire lives without that sense of purpose and that focus on getting to do what they really wanted to do, and he had it at 21. So that's kind of a comfort to me as the mom. I like that he was happy, that he felt good about himself, that he felt good about his contribution, and oh, by the way, that he felt good about doing this so that nobody else in our family would have to serve. That was his mentality.
Okay.
Take one for the team kind of thing.
Yeah,
It didn't
because
work.
you have two other sons.
Right. And
Right.
Our middle son was actually in Marine boot camp when his brother was killed. So
Okay.
He
He had just graduated from high school
He had
and
just
joined.
graduated.
Did he join before he graduated?
did.
Okay.
He did. He actually joined before his senior year, and then as soon as he graduated, a few
went.
weeks after he graduated, he left, and then was in boot camp. So he was at boot camp for a month and maybe 5 weeks or so before Spencer was killed. And then our third son was just getting ready to start high school.
Okay.
So-
And did he also
No.
serve? Okay.
No. I think I don't know what his path would have been, because we'll just never know. That was such a life-changing thing for all of us. So we'll never really know what his path would have been. But you can't.
He was so young when all this happened that it kind of.
and saw what it did
Right.
to
Mhm.
us. But, there aren't words. I would like to be able to adequately describe what it's like to have your heart completely broken and still function. But I still don't understand it. But he was a witness to that, and he not only was a witness to it, he felt it as well. So his path became something different than what it would have been.
Right. It was a seismic shift for him.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, for all of you actually, but
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You asked if the reserve, if they knew kind of, they were being trained to go
Okay.
overseas. They knew that they were going to be deployed. They knew that at some point in time they were going to be brought into the conflict because the reserve units were supporting, a lot of operations that were happening in Afghanistan at the time. The Chinook was a major part of the effort. Its abilities, its opportunity to climb to high altitudes, to get over the mountains. It's just reliability. Its size and how it could quickly get equipment and people into areas and out of areas. It was a major part of the conflict, and so they knew that they were going to. In fact, they got called up to go to Haiti for the earthquakes that were happening at that
2010.
particular 2010,
Yeah.
and got prepared. It disrupted several lives. People put weddings on hold. It quit their jobs because reservists are working typically, and got ready to go on that deployment, and made it all the way to their Fort Hood staging area, and then they were told that they were going to stand down, which meant that they weren't going to go to Haiti. So they ended up not going to Haiti. But that was a rapid preparation for a deployment.
It gave them a pretty good idea of what it would be like when they were deployed if they were to go to.
Which happened,
Iraq or
in March of
Afghanistan.
2011.
Yeah.
They were
Yeah.
called to go to Afghanistan, and so they were ready for that.
They were ready. Yeah, because really they train. Really, that's what it's all about until that happens.
And
that
people
they're called
don't
up.
know. If you're not associated with military, you don't know how much training there is and how much these lives are just they can change in a moment. Like these guys, when they got the call for Haiti, it was like they got a call that they were going to have to report the next day. The next day was a Friday, and they were on the planes and helicopters to Fort Hood on Sunday. So in that time, they prepared for the worst, didn't know what they were going to be walking into in Haiti. And so they, we were doing things like buying rolls and rolls and rolls of toilet paper and taking the cardboard out of the middle and smashing them down as far as they could go so we could pack as much as possible. And, just all of the things. And these people, and Spencer was single, so he didn't have to do much else. He didn't have to prepare his kids. He didn't have to find childcare. He didn't have to, try to get married quickly so that, that could be happening. And, he didn't have to do any of those things. But when you see that and you see the people who did do those things, our military is the most amazing force on this planet for being able to jump in and do whatever the job is. And they all do. And it's an amazing thing to watch. It's heartbreaking as well. But it is truly an amazing thing.
Well, now, before Spencer joined the Army, what was your experience with the military? Do either of you come from military families or had relatives that served? Or
I did not serve, and Megan did not serve, but both of our fathers did.
Okay.
And I think that was a factor. Megan had an uncle who served in the Vietnam War, and I think our boys saw that. But we were always love of country and patriotic and
Our did was
emotional,
red, white, and blue. So
okay.
emotional, on the 4th
Sure.
of July, and the kids, developed that.
It has an effect.
Love.
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Has an influence.
So I think we were always,
always
Sure.
cognizant.
appreciative and understanding
Right.
of what freedom means and
Right.
what we have.
We live the lives that we live on the backs of the people who have been willing to not live this life. So to me, living our best life is what we're supposed to do.
So you weren't really surprised at some of the things when it was time to get called up and they just, it was like drop everything and go, or were you, or had you expected that, or were there some surprises to, his experiences?
Yeah, of course. They tell you those things, and they gather the parents or the wives or whatever together, and they tell you this is how the things are going to be. But until you actually experience it, and like with Haiti, it was, they didn't know what they were going to be going into. They didn't even know where they were going to sleep. They thought they were going to be, sleeping on a beach somewhere. I mean, nobody knew anything about what was going to happen in Haiti, and so they said, prepare for walking around for 3 months in 3-foot piles of rubble and whatever you think that's going to be. And we're like, okay, so lots of toilet paper. I mean, you just don't think about that. Well, okay, so then Haiti didn't happen, but that put them in the queue for when they went to Afghanistan, and now we have a better understanding of, there's, like if we're going to go on a trip, I can take pretty much anything I want. I mean, I'm limited by the size of my vehicle and how many bags Dale's willing to carry into the hotel. But they are, like, here's your space, this little tub, whatever they call those things.
Yeah, I don't know. Tub.
Yeah, I can't remember. It has a name. Everything in the military has a name. It probably has an acronym. I don't know. But it's like everything you're going to need for a year, put in this tub.
Yeah, that's it.
And boy, and as Americans, we're not really used to that, right? It's like, I could really use an SUV of my own.
Yes.
Could I just, fill that one up? Yeah.
Can we just sling load that underneath the helicopter, please?
I can remember, as they were preparing to go on the deployment to Afghanistan, and we had an opportunity to go to the hangar and to, see them off, and I can remember that, just clearly, just walking around and seeing the families there and seeing those military men and women hug their loved ones, and the time that we spent with Spencer, and I could see in his eyes, just this wonderment. What am I doing? Is this going to be okay? Are my parents going to be okay? And a little extra long hug on the. But that's the last time we saw him.
Yeah.
That was it. And I can picture. Just different things about that are really special memories to hold, but just wondering, what should I have said something different to him? Should I have said a little bit more? Should I have said, I love you for the 20th time instead of the 19th time. You know, what else could I have done in that moment, you know? And
Yeah.
I wonder about that all the time. But it was a very difficult moment to let him go.
Yeah.
I remember that, and to not know, because we didn't know where he was going. You know,
Right, you knew kind of geographically, but you
Yeah.
didn't really know what he was
No.
going into and
No.
what
Right.
circumstances would be.
And as it turns out, you know, they were going into some very difficult places, working and crewing some very special operations types of missions that were very, very dangerous. And over time, he knew that. He realized that too, and would communicate a little bit of that to us.
Yeah, the military can prepare you as a family for a lot of things, but not everything.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, I don't know what the psychology is, but if you would have said, you know, dear Mrs. Duncan, we are going to take your son over to a place very far away where he won't have any comfort at all. And, oh, by the way, he'll be working every single night and he'll get shot at a lot. And we don't know if he's coming home. I wouldn't have let him go. So, I mean,
Sure.
you know, I would have
Right,
been
who would,
the mom
right.
wrapped around his ankles and they would have
You're not
dragged
going,
me
yeah.
across the tarmac. Yeah, so it's all unknown. You don't know what's going to happen. And when Spencer got there and he started, I mean, because of operational security, we don't talk about, you know, whatever happens, but he would hint, you know, like, you know, flying tonight with a group of people who did something really special in May. Well, that was the SEAL team that took down Osama bin Laden. So, you know, he kind of, you know, got the point across. And usually after, you know, like he'd never said, we're going out tonight, blah, blah, blah. He never did anything like that. So a few days after they would do something, he would kind of hint at what they had done. But it was really, mostly it was infilling and exfilling special ops soldiers.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so,
Chasing
Yeah.
high-value targets, that kind of
okay, yeah, which is different. Yeah, that makes it very dangerous. Yeah.
which he loved. You know, he was so happy when he first got to Afghanistan. He was at Bagram, which at the time was the huge place where most of the brass was and everything, and he didn't want to be there. He wanted to be at the, you know, where he ended up being out, kind of, you know, where there wasn't as much structure to everything, and it was more like, you know, it was more like real fighting for him, you know, real not fighting, but real army stuff for him. You know, it was real.
He was doing what he was trained to do.
doing what he was trained to do.
He was ready
And
for
what he
that.
was prepared to do, yeah.
Yeah.
Not just like, you're going to have to do this and you drag your feet because you don't want to do it, but he really wanted to do what he was doing. He wanted to make a difference, and he did.
So what did you know while he was there? What did you kind of know about or hear about his daily life and you know, kind of what was going on? How could he communicate with you? Could he call you?
No.
Or how would you find that out? Email or?
No. It was very spotty where he was, because he was so far out. Their spot was so far out of any civilization and high up in the Wardak province, or the Bungar province. I can't remember.
Wardak province.
That was where he was killed. Yeah.
It was a very active part of the country.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Meaning there was a lot of missions and a lot of things that were happening kind of in that area. And his base was right in the middle of that.
Okay.
And you know, they were doing night missions. So, you know, he slept during the day, flew at night, which meant that they were, you know, all dark. They were doing night vision goggles and various other things. And so, you know, the times that we did talk to him, it was like right before he was going to hit the sack, or he was just getting up. You know, it was really a difficult time, and the reception was not good. You know, it was very spotty. Sometimes we'd lose contact with him and couldn't get it back. And but you could tell. I mean, he was tired. I mean, you could see in his eyes that, you know, he was doing a lot, and it was not that he was it was overwhelming to him, but just that he was, he was fulfilled. He was doing his thing and making sure it was getting done, and the rest of the guys were in support, and he was with his buddies, and he was doing something powerful in his mind.
And there kind of became this like rhythm to our communication with him. He and I could message through Facebook every few days, we'd get something from him. But for us all to gather around the computer, and we could Skype with him, but because of the reception and because because his roommate had the opposite sleep schedule that he did, or the person who shared the wall with him. So we'd pull up Skype, and he would wave at us and say hi so that I could see, him moving and everything. And then he would turn his camera off and use his headphones and type, because that was really kind of the only way we could communicate. He could hear us, but he didn't want to talk because of his roommate, so he typed.
Right.
So it was kind of this, and it would, the connection would drop, and then we'd have to wait for him to call back, and then the connection would drop, and it was just very frustrating, but life-giving at the same time, just to see his face and see him wave, and just be able to look at his eyes. That was life at that point.
Yeah. Like you said, so he was a guy with he was a man with focus.
Oh, he was focused.
He was fulfilled, but tired, and really kind of. But was that good to actually be able to see him and know that he was?
Well, part of it was he was safe. When we saw him, he was there. He was safe. He was back in his bunk. The mission was over, or it hadn't started yet, but he was at that moment he was safe. And we knew that. And so there's that relief, don't need to worry right now.
Yeah.
There he is.
Got this time. Yeah. Every parent likes to know exactly where their kids are and if they're safe at that given moment, and that's all we really have, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So he went in March. He was deployed in March.
March to Fort Hood. They
to
left
Fort Hood.
From Gardner to Fort Hood in March.
And then when did he actually go over to Afghanistan?
In May.
In May. Okay. All right. And then
they were boots on the ground. Well, they actually, when Osama bin Laden was captured and taken care of, they were in Fort Hood. That was like their last few days in Fort Hood. So they were, by Memorial Day, they were all where they were supposed to be in Afghanistan.
Okay. And so then, in August, then he would. What happened that day? If you don't mind me asking.
No.
If you don't mind telling me.
So it's crazy. They had taken. They were searching for or chasing a high value target, and they had inserted some Army Rangers into a village. And they're, I don't know all the details, or I don't know actually all the details that I can share, but it became apparent that the high value target was leaving the village, escaping the village, and so they were bringing in another round of special operators to try to keep that from happening. And they were flying at kind of the last minute. The decision was made to put everybody on one helicopter. They usually flew in pairs of Chinooks, and then also they had Apache helicopter escorts. That's always, the Chinooks always have Apache escorts. So they decided to put everybody in one helicopter, in one Chinook, and that just happened to be the Chinook that Spencer was on. And they flew into a landing zone that hadn't been used. So there was no expectation that anybody was ever going to fly in there. And it was a dark night, and they were flying without lights, so there was no indication that they were coming into the area other than the sound of a Chinook, which if you've heard that, the wop, 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 wop kind of thing. And an insurgent stepped out of a building and launched a rocket-propelled grenade at a sound, and missed.
And the first rocket missed the helicopter.
Yeah.
the second rocket took off a 10-foot section of the aft rotor blade of the helicopter, which is crucial to the flight of the helicopter. So when that was removed, the helicopter went into a fatal spin. And it was actually the G-forces of the helicopter spinning that killed them. And then it crashed into a seabed and exploded.
Riverbed.
Into a riverbed, and exploded, and they were all killed. Everyone on board was
There were 30 on
killed.
board.
There were 30 Americans, and there were 22 Navy SEALs in this SEAL Team 6 in this particular operation. The 5 Army air crew. There were 3 Air Force special operators that were on board. A military working dog, Bart, and his handler were on board. And then there were 7 Afghan nationals with their special forces that were on board as well. So in total, there were 38 that were lost.
That day.
Lost, yeah. And as soon as that happened, and we've heard and seen footage and various other things from the Apaches. The Apaches were obviously in shock, and they had fired on the riverbed, and they had fired where they thought that the rockets had come from. But just immediately after that, the site needed to be secured because it was in kind of enemy territory, if you will. And so the Army Rangers who were in the village that had started with the first mission hoofed it over, I think, a mile or more to get to this crash site to actually guard and protect the crash, so that they could extract the survivors if there were any, or the remains, which it ended up being the remains. But they protected the site, and we've actually met a couple of those Rangers and Scouts who were a part of that protection detail, and they got shot at while they were there.
It was still a pretty
It was
dangerous
still a dangerous
situation.
place, yeah. But they protected the site. They kept it secure while they removed all of our guys. I'll never forget that. How important that was to us and the other families to be able to know that they protected that so that they could bring our son back to us. But they were all killed, and the people at the base were devastated. But we had heard on the news, and by the way, they tell you as parents, don't listen to the news.
Ask you, yeah.
The
Right.
news tends to get things wrong, and we had heard.
Not that you ever did.
Oh, no, I would say that it is one of the hardest jobs you can possibly do because
Sure.
you're getting information and then it's different. No, it's true. You never, the first report you hear of anything, you should do with a grain of salt.
we didn't pay attention. We listened to the news, and that morning. So it was a Saturday morning for us, and that morning, we heard about a Chinook that was shot down, and I don't think we were panicked. We weren't that nervous. We through the day, because the news was saying things like it's the 160th Aviation Regiment, which is typically what flies with some of the special operators, and Spencer was in the 158th.
Okay.
And so, and we hadn't heard anything from anybody. There were no
Nobody
phone
came to the
calls.
door, so it was like, we're good.
Megan had made a few calls and actually reached out to Spencer and said, we know that you can't communicate right now, but when you can, please, just tell us, let us know that you're okay and that everything's fine. And no one else was responding, and so we went through the day, feeling pretty comfortable that it wasn't Spencer. I mean, sad, but comfortable that it wasn't Spencer.
Yeah, it's kind of a conflicted feeling, I'm sure. You're
Right.
you're like relieved, but you can feel for those other families
Right.
out there. Right.
Right.
So it was around maybe 5:30, 6 o'clock in the evening at the doorbell rang. And I was walking towards the door, and Megan was following me, and Calder, our youngest son, was there, and was following, up to the out of the den up to the door, and I went to the door and I looked out the people. It was 2 uniformed officers, and my heart just sunk, just completely sunk. And I turned around and I said, Megan, And she collapsed and fell to the floor, and Spencer held her.
Spencer didn't hold me.
I'm sorry. Called her, held her. And I opened the door, and it's the message that that they're trained to say. You could see how hard it was. I was looking in these eyes of these officers, and you could tell how hard it was. Are you the parents of Spencer Colson Duncan? I said, yes, we are. And he said, the Secretary of Defense regrets to inform you that your son has been killed. And we brought him in, and one of the first things that came to mind, and I don't know if Megan said it, but what about Tanner? Tanner's in boot camp, Marine boot camp. What about our middle son? And one of the officers, left and called, and they started that process to get, to help Tanner understand what had happened. But it just became a very numb experience at that point. Time just kind of was going by, and they were there for a while, and there was a chaplain there, and then friends and people that loved us were in our home almost immediately, and they were surrounding us. They were taking care of us, and taking care of the phone. This was a big event. The loss of life is still today the single daily loss of life in Afghanistan, and so the media was at the door. We had phone calls from national news organizations. We had just all kinds of things wanting to happen. I think at some point in time, maybe not in the first day, but Dr. Phil called and wanted to know if we wanted to be on the show with the Westboro Baptist Church to talk about, and so it was it was that kind of thing. And these friends and family, one of my best friends came up and spent 2 weeks with us and just answered the phone and took care of different things. And I don't know how we would have made it without that kind of support. And so that was it was a numb few weeks until the day they brought Spencer back to us.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that was an amazing event.
From the day that we found out we lost Spencer to when we had his actual funeral was 12 days. So
it's a long
time.
Yeah.
And it's a long time to, it's not like, in 12 days we're going to leave on vacation. We have to do our daily things until then. It was 12 days of, what do you do? What's your routine now? And there were different memorial services and different things that we had to, or that we attended and, tried to get through that. And by the way, our youngest son was starting high school. And it's just so many things going on. And we would lie in bed each night. And the first thing we did was we committed that we were going to make it through this together. And then we would just lie in bed holding hands, just staring up at the ceiling. And I kept thinking, I'm not going to wake up in the morning because you can't live with this much pain. And I didn't want to die, but I couldn't see that I was going to live. And we did. And we'd wake up the next day and I'd be kind of surprised. And you string enough of those days together and you realize that you're not done yet and that you're supposed to be here for something else. So that was kind of a really awkward way of finding a purpose,
in it,
getting our own mission going.
Right. Well, now tell me, because this is probably within the last 20 years, is a time when things would be that intrusive. The media would be that intrusive.
Yes.
That would be, with social media, and we have a fractionalized news cycle, a 24-hour news cycle, and there's so many channels that you can, and so many people that want your time and want you to tell your story, and here we are, 10 years later. But how does that work into that process, that 12 days that you're waiting? and you're having Dr. Phil call you about, and that's not a just tell your story. That's a
Exploit your story.
exploit your story, right? And you can be asked. I mean, and there's certainly a lot of people who will do that. But how does that feel when you've had a cataclysmic thing happen to you, the loss of a child, and in the manner that it happened, and you've got people asking, calling you, for all different reasons, and none of them are to help you, but they're self-serving for those, for many of those outlets.
Here's something that we decided in those 12 days, because there were a couple of options. I mean, one option was for us to encircle each other and just be a family and grieve, the way that we wanted to grieve, and just block out all of that, and just ignore it and block it out. And the other was, and this was hard for us, this was a hard decision, to make sure that people understood the sacrifice, cost, and price of freedom, and that our son's name would not be forgotten, and that we would be able to talk about him and to honor him and to help people understand who he was, tell his story, that we would be able to do that, and that out of this, good could happen, that we would find a way to help other veterans, because if he'd have been able to come home, we know that's what he would have done. He would have done everything that he could to help his brothers and sisters and to help other veterans. He didn't come home.
Right.
And so we decided that we were going to do that for him, and that it was going to be about him. And we do our best to try to make sure that everyone understands this is not about us. It's not about Dale and Megan. We don't want it to be about us. We're a very private
Yes.
couple. We really are. This was not, we didn't want to be in front of cameras, but we wanted more than anything to honor our son and to help other veterans, because that's what he would want us to do. He would have been mad at us
If
if
you
we
had
done
just
it. He would have been.
shut the door and
Yeah.
hidden away.
And so,
Yeah.
what we decided to do was that we were going to, I don't remember who coined this, but we were going to grieve out loud. We were going to allow people to see into this life so that we could do
Not
this.
everything.
Right,
Well,
right,
yeah, no,
right.
But-
into
yeah.
the grieving journey and the process that we've been going through.
Yeah.
And we were
And
going to,
still.
yeah.
It's still,
It's still going through.
it doesn't stop.
It never goes away. You can't lose a child and have that be okay in your life. You can't.
And other people have lost children. We
Right.
know that.
Right.
We're not special in that regard. But we do have an opportunity here, through Spencer's service and sacrifice to do something special for other people. And we're going to do that.
And so you did start a foundation. You have started a foundation. And kind of tell me about that.
So Spencer's respect for veterans was immense, and he couldn't wait to come home from that deployment and get his veteran tag on his Jeep. He was so excited about that. So it was really logical. A friend came and said, "Hey, I want to do something to, in memory of Spencer, and we're thinking about maybe doing a 5K." And we're like, "Okay, sure, let's do that." And they said, "Well, it'll probably raise some money." And we're like, "Okay, let's do that." And what do you want to do with it? Well, let's help some veterans. And so that's kind of how it was born. And we went ahead and started this foundation. We're a nonprofit, and
What's it called?
the Spencer C. Duncan Make It Count Foundation. Make it count is what Dale used to say to the boys every morning before he left for work. Have a great day, make it count.
When they were growing up and going to school, it was my job to get them up. And I don't know why, but I just started saying that because I really wanted them to do their best, to do whatever they could to make it count that day. We didn't own the words, but it was our mantra. This is one of the last things that Spencer said to me, said to us
Yeah.
in one of those sketchy phone calls, just a few weeks before he was killed. We were talking, and it was late, and I had to go to bed because I had to get up for work the next morning. And I said, Spencer, I just, gotta go. And he stopped me. And he said, I know, Dad. I'm making it count. So, that's our mantra. We don't own it, but that's what we want people to understand. That they have an opportunity to make it count.
Yeah.
And what could be better than that if everybody found their way of making a difference in this world? So that's what we're doing.
And so what the 5K grew into what all have you done?
So we just had our annual 5K just the the very last day of July, and before this year we had given away over $750,000 to organizations that are veteran engaged. So not just, hey, we do something fun for veterans, but really engaging veterans and all veterans, not a specific, not from a specific era of service or anything, but all veterans. Right. And so it's grown. Our passions, our education is my passion, and Dale's is eliminating homelessness and post-traumatic stress for veterans. So that's kind of been our tripod of what we've done with the money that we've given away. So we've given to several colleges and universities for scholarships for veterans who either their GI Bill ran out, or they signed up under a different GI Bill and didn't have enough for college expenses. And some of them had college expenses taken care of, but they needed gas money to get to school or whatever. Mm-hmm. So we've been able to do that. There's a program at Oklahoma State University that's a veteran entrepreneurship program that we've been able to support. And so there have been several veterans who've been able to launch their businesses from that. There's a local program here, which I believe you're familiar with, the Battle Within.
Right. We interviewed Justin.
Right. And so we've been supporters of that program.
Justin's a Lathe South graduate.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Not the same year, but
no. And actually, Justin came back and he told his story, so I don't need to retell his story. But when he came back, he was kind of like having a struggle, and he actually showed up on the day that we brought Spencer's remains home. 10,000 people lined the route from the airport to the funeral home, and Justin was one of those people. And then, a few years later, here we are investing in the program that he is the executive director of. So, yeah, it's a small world.
But were you surprised at the support that the community gave you?
Yes.
Oh,
in that sense?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's understandable that community would do that, but we were overwhelmed by it. I mean, I can't express what it felt like to be in that procession, and at some point, I didn't know what to do. I'm looking at face after face after face, and mothers holding their babies and tears just rolling down their face, and one of Spencer's teachers, waving an American flag, just tears rolling down his face, and just that whole thing. And at some point in time, all I could do, I just put my hand up in the window like that, and just left it there, And I can remember as we were going by, other people would reach their hand out, just like that too. And it's like we could connect that way. And it was just an incredible, amazing outpouring of. And the beautiful thing about that was, they were people from all different political backgrounds, people from different races. No one asked any questions about are you left, are you right, are you white, are you black. These were people who were just there for a unified purpose, to let us know that they cared about us and our family. And that was amazing. That was just beautiful.
And the most fascinating part of that to me was the biggest supporters, the people who were the most present, were the Vietnam veterans. The people who didn't receive that kind of welcome when they came home, the people who were disrespected. And they were the first in line to respect our son. You know, that was an amazing thing. And my first glimpse into, really into veterans and how their makeup is. And I'm fascinated by how wonderful they are, for one thing. Just their willingness to serve, but so far beyond that. They really are a family. They really do help look out for each other, and they really, really, really always reach back their hand to help the next person. Even when they are not fully taken care of, they always try to help somebody else.
Which is evident today in the veterans who are working really, really hard to make sure they get people out of Afghanistan.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing to just watch that and see what kind of commitment and dedication they have to their people, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
Amazing.
So, I would be remiss, I guess, in not asking, you know, current events out of Afghanistan are pretty hard to watch.
Yes.
As a Gold Star family, having lost a son in Afghanistan, how does that affect you? And, you know, when you watch the news, or do you watch that news?
No, I can't. And in fact, there was a big event today, and I can't even talk about it because
12 soldiers were killed
Right.
today.
there are 12 families
Right.
who are just starting this walk that changes you forever. It changes who you are. And we've been asked, and I can't articulate how I feel about simultaneously the 20 years that have been given to the people in that area to change and grow. And there are, you know, girls whose lives were changed because people like my son were there to help change their lives. And they got to grow up and be women and got to go to school and do things that they weren't going to have otherwise. And then, you know, juxtapose that against now there are girls who won't be able to do that again. And I think probably the only way that I can get through that is to just think about not the things that you can't do, but to just do the things you can do. You know, we can't help every veteran, we can't change every veteran's life, but we can change some. And we'll do that. We'll keep doing that the best that we can and make the difference where we can. And if we do that, and then if you do that, and everybody does that, then that's how we change the world, by everybody doing the best they can to change what they can.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you want me to know? Or our audience, not me personally, but our audience.
You know, when we started the foundation, we really didn't know what we were doing, and I think we've grown a lot through that entire process. And by the way, everything that we do is volunteer. You know, Megan and I are not benefiting in any way, you know, from this, and neither are the volunteers that are working for us. I mean, all of the money is that comes in from our donors, and we've had some amazing donors that have stepped up to walk beside us, partner with us, and you know, make it count. All of the money that we're raising is going right back out to support those veterans, and the beauty of that is we get to present those checks sometimes, and we get to see the faces of the people who are going through, you know, the Battle Within program. We've had an opportunity to go to the very beginning of that program and see how they looked when they started the program, and then to see the hope that is suddenly in their faces at the end of the program. We've been able to see that, to witness that. We've received letters from nursing students who told us that, you know, this little $500 scholarship you gave me was the difference. I was not going to finish school. I was not going to go back to school. But when I got that, I went back and I finished it, and now I have a nursing degree. That's powerful. And for us to be able to to be a part of that. Again, in Spencer's name, honoring his legacy. This is his legacy. This is what Spencer's effort is doing. Is just amazing. It's overwhelming. And, I don't know how long we'll do this. I mean, I think for us, it's grown every year. I mean, it's been bigger every year. We're going to give away over $100,000 this year. And, this is, and the COVID year, when we didn't have an event, we still had 660 people registered to do this virtually,
Yeah.
And it's just overwhelming, Sarah, to think about all of that support. And I don't know how long we're going to do it. We're going to keep doing it until we can't do it anymore, I think. And if there was just a little more of that make it count attitude and compassion for others and in this world today, I think we'd be in a better world, a better place. We're going to try to change our little corner of it with this effort, with this foundation and the work that we're doing. And hopefully we'll be able to continue to kind of do that.
Well, I think that, we have a friend who says, if your life is touched by cancer, then you're probably going to, help raise funds to find a cure for cancer. Or if your, child is born and they have diabetes, then you're probably going to be involved with, Juvenile Diabetes Association or whatever. And that's how things get done. People get their passion sparked, and that's how things get done. Whether people acknowledge it or not, you get to live your life because of our veterans. And so that should spark most of us to want to do something. We take these men and women and we train them to be warriors, and then we bring them home and we don't retrain them how to be citizens. And man, that's the least that we should do. That's the very least that we should do. So if we can make a difference by, sending somebody to college, or through a program that helps them deal with their post-traumatic stress, or an entrepreneurship program where they get to launch their business, or whatever it is, if we get to be a small part of that, to me, it feels like we're changing the world. We're not trying to take it over, because if we did, then the world would be covered in chocolate and we would all have purses and shoes. But
Sounds good.
Yeah, I know, it's like my ideal world. But we can change. If everybody does something, we can all change the world, and especially now, especially over the last few years, seeing just how acrimonious things have become. I want to be part of the solution, and this platform that we've been given, we didn't ask for. This is not what I wanted to be doing at this stage of my life. We were going to be traveling, and we had an empty nest, and we were going to be doing.
Spencer was going to be married and
had kids,
and children,
yes,
and
I was going to have
grandchildren.
grandkids, and this was just not what we were going to be doing, and. I want to not let that overtake me. I want the joy of knowing Spencer to overshadow the sorrow of losing Spencer. And that's how I'm going to do this. And so we'll give away money, and we'll do a 5K in August in Kansas. And we'll keep doing that.
And people will sign up
and
to
people
run
will
it.
sign up and do it.
They
People
will.
are just as crazy as we are, apparently. And we'll just keep doing that until we can't. Or until the world's changed, whichever
Right.
comes first.
Very good.
Yeah.
And whatever happened to Spencer's dog, Dixie?
Oh,
She
goodness.
still lives with us.
Does she really?
Yes, he is
She's,
not coming back for that dog.
She's old.
She is old.
She's struggling, and we're going to lose her before too long,
Yeah.
I'm sure. But she's still there. We still have her.
He had her just long enough to infuse his personality into her, so she is, she does what she wants, just like Spencer.
That's why I always told my kids, I go, you're going to go to college, but do not bring me back a pet because I will end up with a pet, and you guys will go on and do something else, and I'll get attached to it, and you'll want to take it with you.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah. So after they didn't go to Haiti, he called one day. I was actually down visiting Dale's parents, and Spencer called, and he said, "Hey, I have a friend who has to get rid of this dog, and I'm just wondering." And he was living in his own apartment by then. But he said, "I was wondering, I'm going to have to leave the dog somewhere when I deploy, but I wondered if it would be okay." I'm like, "How do you say no to a soldier who wants a dog?" And one of the last things I said to him, the nights leading up to him leaving, he and I was working on a project for work, and I was staying up late, and he and I would talk late into the night, and he was sitting on the couch, and his dog came over and sat down with him, and I said, "You do know that you have to come back for her." And I wasn't talking about, I was talking about you have to take your dog with you.
right.
And he didn't. And ironically, this is a story, I don't know that we've shared this a lot. For Spencer's funeral, we happened to have family pictures made right before he deployed, and individual pictures of the boys. And so for his funeral, our friends took a picture of Spencer and blew it up into a good size picture. And so the person who did that brought it over to our house and put it up on the mantle. And Dixie was outside. Spencer's dog was outside when that happened, and she walked in. We opened the door to the den, and she walked in and saw that picture, and she started. She had a very visceral reaction, like kind of a whining, barky thing, and laid down, and it was just this very impactful moment. And I've thought a lot about that, and that's kind of the way Spencer impacted people's lives. He just made such an impact on them that his absence is a presence, if that makes any kind of sense.
Makes perfectly good sense. Yeah.
And so that's kind of why we just have to keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need people to know that we truly loved our son, and we really, really miss him. And if he could come home today, we'd open the door and
Absolutely.
And a lot of what we do would be different. But he's not coming home, and we know that. And so this is our we'll keep him in our hearts and our minds, and we're going to tell people about him.
Yeah.
And we'll keep him
and do
his
good
legacy.
things in his
Yeah.
name and
Yeah.
in his memory.
So
We'll try.
That's it.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for your time and telling us your story, and
Thank you.
I appreciate it a lot. Thanks.
We appreciate the
Thank you.
opportunity. Thank
Yep.
If you're interested in learning more about this program, please visit mymcpl.org/veteran salute. If you're a veteran or concerned about one, there are caring and qualified VA responders standing by 24/7 with the Veterans Crisis Line at 1-800-243-8255 or via text at 838-255.